Hey guys, good morning and welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den. And in this episode, I want to talk to you guys about the difference between comparison and contrast, okay? So first and foremost, thanks everybody for tuning in to these podcast episodes. Like I said, we've been doing very little promo, so I appreciate you guys for still tuning in and just being my faithful listeners. It makes me feel great, and I'm happy to be able to inspire or provide solace or whatever it is that you guys are getting. Super thankful for that. So this is something that I noticed. A lot of people talk about comparison. Now, when we talk about comparison, it's typically looking at something and saying, this is what I do not possess. And then there comes the envy, the jealousy, all of those things. For me, I learned that when it came to comparison, I wasn't comparing. It was more so contrast. So hear me out. Contrast is when you look at something and you say, okay, this is what I possess, I have, this is, you know what I mean? And then you start to kind of sit in a space within yourself and say, wow, I am worthy, I am enough, I can do this better than I did it before, you know what I mean? Or anything that I was imagining. And so the point that I'm making, you guys, is that it's so important for you to dream bigger than your last dream. It's so important for you to be better than you were yesterday. Okay. It's so important for you to see the world and say, you know what? I have something to contribute that is better than anything that has ever been done before. Right. It's time for you to enter into spaces where you're no longer comparing yourself and making yourself feel like you're not good enough. Right. Telling yourself that you're not good enough. Enter into spaces where you just feel unworthy, you know what I mean? And you start to recognize like, man, I can do this better than that because I possess X, Y, and Z. So contrast really makes you recognize your strengths. You know what I mean? It makes you recognize your strengths. And then when you recognize your strengths, it's kind of like you loving on you and you recognizing the good in you. And so now you're more propelled to go out and do better than you did before. Right. And like I said, at the end of the day, man, listen, when you really lock in on you, because this is the thing, like, when it comes to comparison, it's just nothing more than an insecurity. It's an insecurity. You feel like you can't do it. And you're hating on somebody else because you feel like they're doing it and you just want to do what they're doing, right? But the thing about comparison is that you'll never be another person. You'll never be able to do what it is that they do. You're not going to have the same opportunities as them, but that should make you exciting. Like that should make you excited. Like that is contrast. You see what I mean? So the contrast is that it's a more of a positive thing when you look at the outside of the world. You can take it in and say, you know what? Dang, I'm so thankful that I possess X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's, necessarily breaking down, because what you have to realize is like, it's not looking at somebody else and tearing them down, saying that I'm better than X, Y, and Z. No. It's looking at somebody and saying, man, I'm so thankful for what I possess. You know what I mean? And it's no longer sizing yourself up to the next person and making yourself feel small. Like if you're going to size yourself up, be like, damn, I'm actually happy that I possess all of this. You know what I mean? And so that's contrast. And I think that that's a really beautiful way to look at it and to rid yourself from that comparison, because comparison just beats you down. Like it beats you down. You just literally feel like you're never going to start anything, right? Because you're constantly in comparison. You don't even recognize what it is that you have. And a lot of people, if I'm being honest, you don't recognize the strength in you because you don't really take time to just sit alone. You're always dealing with people. You're always doing this. You're always doing that. You know what I mean? You're always watching YouTube or, tuning into what somebody else is doing. Like you don't ever really sit with yourself to see, what am I good at? And the thing about life, you guys, is that when you do not know what it is that you're good at, if you feel like I don't know my purpose, first of all, like I said, your purpose can only come from God. So just ask God, and I'm sure that will be revealed to you within the next 6 or 7 months. And that's how that's going to get handled. But in addition to that, people feel like, oh man, I don't have a spark. I don't have anything that I'm really good at. I don't have anything that, like I'm not creative, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, you haven't tried enough things, right? And this just goes back to success, man. Like I feel like so many people think that, it's just going to be like a walk in the park and it's just, you're just going to walk into these daisies, not realizing like it really takes hard work because you have to keep going, right? To even see if you can get better at it. Like if you can really cultivate some greatness in that area. In addition to that, man, it takes failing. You have to fail a lot because it's like, you don't know what's going to hit. You don't know what it is that you're doing whenever you're starting something. You know what I mean? Like you're taking the resources that you have. I'm somebody who's very resourceful. If I want to do something, I'm just going to start it and that's what it's going to be. And so it's going to be really cool to see how this podcast progresses because, I just started with Anchor. Like I don't know. Like I designed my little logo, right? I'm really big on like creative, direction and just like creativity. And so I just used what I had, you know what I mean? But I didn't sit around and say, oh, I need all this. Now, the first podcast I did, and I bought all this expensive equipment and I don't even use it. You know what I mean? It was like a total waste of time. And so it's just like, you have to tap into your resourcefulness. And if you always waiting for something that's not there, you're never going to start anything. You're never going to, not perfect, but you're perfect. You're never going to get better at anything because you're always waiting for something in the winds. You're always thinking about something that, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you'll never start, you know what I mean? And so I just want people to recognize, and even for myself, like, whenever I start something, I can honestly say one of the things about me is that I do think that when it comes to confidence and self-esteem, it is something that is instilled in us very early on. And so some people have higher self-esteem than others. And so I will say that was something that my dad did instill in me. But by no means, like, of course, at times I still, feel a little, I have my moments, but, nonetheless. So for me, whenever I started something, and on top of, me having been bullied and all those things, I noticed my indifference very early on. And so I didn't really struggle with comparison, and I didn't really struggle with a lot of self-doubt and insecurity because, it was instilled in me very early on. And so whenever I said I was going to do something, I kind of just went for it. You know what I mean? I just kind of went for it. Like I was like, hey, I want to play soccer. And, I didn't know anything about soccer. I wasn't looking at interviews. I wasn't doing anything like that. Like, I'm going to play soccer, played for a year. I got like most improved, you know what I mean? And it's just like, hey, I just gave it a shot, you know what I mean? And so to have got rewarded at the end of that, and I didn't even know how good I could get at that, you know what I mean? But I didn't doubt myself, and I wasn't comparing myself to the other soccer players who went to Copeland, whatever. It was like this soccer club, and, it's like people are playing, and they've been playing their whole life since they was like 5, you know what I mean? Playing with soccer balls in a baby crib, like, that wasn't my thing. And so I never really looked at things when I was going to start something in comparison. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, because it really takes away from your authenticity, And so don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at other people who are doing what it is that you do in a sense of a blueprint, and you looking at that in contrast and say, what can I do better? That's my formula. You know what I mean? But when you start to look at people and say, dang, man, they're doing X, Y, and Z, I ain't got none of that. You know what I mean? That's where you're going to go wrong every time. And I think that's where a lot of people give up. But yeah, man, success, I think that it's more than just a simple formula. It's more than just hanging around certain people. It's a knowing within your mind. It's a belief. And it's a lot of work that you have to do within yourself, and as well as, putting your hands to work in the external sense as well. And I just think that a lot of people just think, okay, if I just hang around this person, right, I can piggyback off of them, or, you know what I mean? If I just start this one thing, it'll just take off and that'll be the end of it. You know what I mean? Not recognizing like, man, it's trial and error time and time again, and I just think that, hard work and just the things that really are put into having a great life and really being successful, right? Whichever that is for you. But I feel like for most people, it's financial freedom. It's just something that we don't talk about. It's just something that's not really praised. It's like, hey, I did this within a year. You could flip your income in 6 months. You know what I mean? And all of those formulas are great. And I'm sure some of those things work. But, anytime it doesn't work, right? If you have people who go to these seminars and listen to these podcasts, it's because they didn't try, right? They didn't give it their best. They gave up along the way, because at the end of the day, it's that main factor that remains in anything that you do. You can go to many different seminars, read many different books. At the end of the day, you cannot step into a space where you neglect the law. You know what I mean? Like, you will reap what you sow. Like, you have to sow your seeds. Like, you cannot reap a harvest without sowing your seeds. Like, you're going against the law of life. You know what I mean? And so I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter all of those things. If you didn't pay your price, you're not going to get paid, period. Okay, so I just want to leave everybody with that, and I hope everybody has a great day, and I'm going to leave you guys with your thoughts.